Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to take a different turn. God is stirring something kind of urgent for me to share with you all. I had mentioned that the Lord was stirring me to do a teaching. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I was a little reluctant to start this teaching up again because all of hell has come against me and my family in the teaching of this particular book. But in July 14th of '04, God had given me this book, and I began to go all out over the region, teaching and taking it out. And me and my family came under attack. It was like a target on my back for getting this information out there. And so when the Lord brought this thing back around and he said, launch out into the deep. So, when the disciples had been fishing and, well, God, we did that before. And nevertheless, at your word, we'll let down these nets. And so that's where I'm at with this. But anyway, in '04, and I had been traveling, going all out, and my family came under warfare in a progress of years. And in '08, just 4 years later, we lost our only son. One of my friends had seen this in the spirit realm, and she said, Vicki, she said, the forces that were in your house were enough to take all of you all out. So I'm going to tell you that what I'm teaching you, that there was a lot of adversity to keep it from you. So I'm going to call it the 5-minute lifeline. I'm going to just do some teaching segments on this information. And then recently God showed me something. He showed me a round door. On the other side of that round door, you all know doors are not round, they're rectangular. But on the other side of that round door was a very dark force, and blood was coming up underneath the door. And God showed me in that room, he showed me a lot of people. And I'm going to tell you, it was a lot of young people in that room. A lot of young people, and it was coming for them. So this is a lifeline. Listen, you all need to take this about this mental health. And if you all have been in this position, get over it. And you really have been in a real prideful place. I beg you today. I beg you to lay it down and to take up a spirit of obedience and humility and to be pleasing to the Lord and to listen to this warning. Because listen, we've been hitting our news and LinkedIn news and Facebook news, and it's too many people. It's too much death going on around us. We're seeing it. And the headlines are unbelievable. And I know that for such a time as this, the Lord is like, I said, launch out into deep and bring this teaching back around. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you know in advance. I'm going to be a little bolder. I'm going to be a little freer. And if you all are like the editor kind of perfection people, I'm going to be reading back and forth with what Lord showed me to pull out. And I'm going to set up on my website. I'm going to post a lighter teaching, then a more in-depth teaching of that. And I'm going to post the worksheets on my website. So if it's something and you know that somebody needs this lifeline, look, don't sit back and don't throw it out there. All right. So anyway, from that book called Overcoming the Issues of Life, I call it oil. So from now on, we're going to say oil. Oil chapter 1. Here was the introduction. Okay. So July 14th, 2004. God began to inspire me. And I mean, all day long, I had to take the coloring book pages from my youngest child at that time and just write down all of what he was giving me to write poems, writing. He brought that book together. So God inspired me, and he gave me a word of revelation knowledge. And he was asking me, he showed me the real cause behind the issues of life. All of us have them, but it's a particular root cycle we get stuck in. It prevents us from reaching our potential, fulfilling our destiny. How many people do you know that you have heard of lately in headlines that did not reach the fullness of their destiny? People of influence, young people that didn't make it, okay? But God appointed for each and every one of us an assignment, all right? So we hear this verse in Jeremiah 1:5 that says, even before he formed us in our mother's bellies, he knew us. Okay, our mothers, when they were pregnant, that was not the first time we were known. God already knew us from the beginning. And before we came forth out of the womb, he sanctified us and ordained us. So if anybody is out there and they are struggling and they're saying, I don't know my purpose, I don't understand my calling, or they have lost sight of that, I assure you to go back and listen to Jeremiah 1:5. This was the King James Version. Again, before he formed you in your mother's belly, God, I'm talking about the God of Genesis, the Almighty God, the one who sits on the throne, the one who sent his only begotten Son, the way, the truth, and the life. He already had known you. He knew your purpose before he formed you. From the beginning, God has special plans for each one of us. That means each one of us is particularly important to God. So then how come so many of us have come to a place where we are stuck and just cannot seem to get over this invisible hump that holds us back from becoming what we were ordained to achieve? What God's plans and purposes were for our lives. Some of us have analyzed our situations. We've come to a conclusion that it is beyond reason why we are where we are today. Why are so many of us today struggling with mental health, emotional problems, relational problems? With all of our grades, diplomas, opportunities, impressive resumes, we simply cannot justify why we are not at the certain place we aspired to be. Others of us have convinced ourselves that God's power is limited to starting out on the wrong side of the fence, not having the right career or employment opportunities, degrees, or enough resources to accomplish our desires, or even that marrying the wrong spouse has limited our potential. And then there are a few of us who have brought into the vainest of deceptions that it's because we don't drive the right car, we don't live in the right neighborhood, don't hang around the right people, that has caused us to be unsuccessful in life. I tell you differently. In fact, doesn't it almost seem as if the limitations of our lives swing solely around our environments and material possessions? And that would mean that it is even limited by this COVID virus that is going on. Beloved, I tell you that we're overlooking the Creator who made them all. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Have you ever been able to relate to Psalms 38:8, which says, I'm faint and severely bruised. I have groaned by reason of the anguish of my heart. How many of you could honestly admit that you have similarly become brokenhearted in despair of what you're facing in life, from painful relationships, false expectations, unachieved successes, unfulfilled dreams? You are not alone. In spite of all the issues that have become all too familiar to you, that might have made you feel distant from the Father and isolated from the joys of life, God has still promised us in Matthew 28:20, behold, I am with you always, even until the end of the world. May this promise inspire you to remember that God's divine presence is available to help you and to move you forward with overcoming faith, even until the end of the world. That is my introduction to chapter 1 of Oil, Overcoming the Issues of Life. So I want to pose a question. I'm going to place a workbook page out on my website, VickiKeysLLC.com. If you want to join me in that discussion, then I will post that and you will have that opportunity to join me, and that worksheet will be available to you. But for today, I throw out a lifeline of hope and inspiration. Stay tuned for chapter 1. Chapter 2